In a country built on the promise of equal opportunity, the debate over diversity, equity, and inclusion is far from new. Yet, in recent years, and especially since President Trump assumed office for his second term, the conversation has taken on a renewed intensity, blending history, politics, and corporate strategy. This is the story of DEI in the Trump era, its origins, its evolution, and the clash between long-standing civil rights values and a modern approach to inclusion. Welcome to our deep dive into the current state of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI in America. In this video, we'll explore how DEI initiatives, which once surged in the wake of historic events like the murder of George Floyd, are now being reshaped by a new political and corporate landscape under President Trump's administration. We'll also examine why DEI isn't just about supporting Black communities. It encompasses every group that has been historically marginalized, including women, LGBTQ+ individuals, people with disabilities, indigenous communities, and more. Over the next few minutes, we will break down the impact of President Trump's executive actions on federal DEI programs, how corporations have responded, some rolling back DEI policies, while others remain committed, the lasting legacy of George Floyd's death and the rise of Black Lives Matter. And, most importantly, we will compare and contrast traditional civil rights with today's DEI efforts. Stay with us as we unpack this complex, evolving story. To understand the present, we must first look to the past. The modern struggle for equal rights in America began in earnest during the 1960s. The civil rights movement, led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., led to the dismantling of legalized segregation and the passage of landmark legislation such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This law set the foundation for combating discrimination in education, employment, housing, and voting. Fast forward to the 2000s and beyond, businesses and educational institutions began to embrace the idea that a diverse workforce or student body wasn't just morally right, but was also good for innovation and economic success. Corporations started investing billions in programs that not only aimed to prevent discrimination, but actively promoted inclusion. By 2011, initiatives were formalized at the federal level with Executive Order 13,583 under President Obama, pushing agencies to consider diversity in their practices. And after the tragic death of George Floyd in 2020, a wave of activism, led in part by the Black Lives Matter movement, spurred many companies to launch or expand DEI initiatives in a bid to right historical wrongs and foster a more inclusive society. While these initiatives built on decades of civil rights achievements, modern DEI programs are distinctly different from the legal battles fought during the civil rights era. Whereas early civil rights efforts focused on ending overt discrimination and segregation, today's DEI initiatives strive to create inclusive cultures within organizations, ranging from corporations to universities, to ensure that everyone, regardless of their background, has the opportunity to succeed. And remember, DEI is not solely a program for Black Americans. It encompasses efforts to support all marginalized communities. Upon his return to office, President Donald Trump wasted little time in reshaping the federal government's approach to DEI. In his first few days, Trump signed several executive orders aimed at dismantling what he described as illegal and wasteful DEI programs. Two major orders, one rescinding decades-old policies like Executive Order 11-246, and another targeting current DEI initiatives, set the stage for a sweeping rollback. These orders call on federal agencies to terminate all DEI mandates, programs, and even internal diversity offices. The language is broad, empowering the Trump administration to review and effectively eliminate diversity initiatives in the federal workforce. Federal employees have been instructed to report colleagues who continue to pursue DEI measures in disguise. Critics say that these moves not only undermine the gains made over the past several decades, but also risk turning the federal workforce into a politicized body of yes men, loyal not to the Constitution, but to the current administration. According to recent reports, agencies such as the Department of Education and the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, have already seen significant changes. For example, Trump has even gone so far as to tie these policy changes to tragedies, falsely blaming DEI initiatives for incidents such as an air collision in which 67 lives were lost, even though there is no evidence to support such claims. These executive orders mark a significant change in the federal government's approach to diversity. Rather than viewing DEI as a means of fostering equal opportunity, the administration is portraying these programs as inherently discriminatory, a stark contrast to the principles behind civil rights legislation enacted over 50 years ago. While the legality of these orders will undoubtedly face challenges in court, the immediate effect is clear. A wave of uncertainty has hit federal agencies, and the future of DEI in government remains in limbo. While the Trump administration is attacking DEI in the public sector, the ripple effects are being felt in the private sector as well. Many American companies, which had embraced robust DEI programs in the wake of the George Floyd protests and the rise of Black Lives Matter, are now reconsidering their initiatives. Let's look at some of the companies that have pulled back. Google has recently ended its diversity hiring goals tied to representation targets, updating its annual filings to reflect a shift away from these metrics. Target has concluded its belonging at the bullseye strategy and will end several external diversity-focused surveys and initiatives, such as its REACH programs. Amazon and Meta platforms have also rolled back certain DEI efforts, citing legal and external pressures. Walmart, for instance, confirmed that it would not renew a 5-year commitment to its equity center, and it is rethinking how supplier contracts consider race and gender. However, it's not all a story of retrenchment. Some companies have doubled down on their commitment to DEI despite the political and cultural headwinds. For example, Costco has remained steadfast. Despite pressure from conservative activist groups, Costco's board has vocally defended its DEI policies, citing the importance of a welcoming workforce that reflects the diversity of its customers. J.P. Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs have also stood by their diversity initiatives, arguing that a diverse and inclusive workforce is not only a moral imperative, but a competitive advantage in today's global marketplace. At first glance, it might seem that the civil rights movement of the 1960s, today's DEI initiatives, and the Black Lives Matter movement all share a common goal: advancing equal rights for all. And while there is overlap, there are also important differences in their methods, objectives, and historical contexts. Let's break it down. The civil rights movement, focused on dismantling legalized segregation and overt discrimination through grassroots activism, legal challenges, and mass protests, achieved landmark legal victories like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The struggle was fought primarily by African Americans, but it also paved the way for broader protections for all marginalized groups. Modern DEI initiatives evolved in response to both historical inequities and new challenges in today's multicultural society. Aim to create inclusive organizational cultures through policies, training, and diversity targets. DEI programs are not solely about race. They cover gender, sexual orientation, disability, and more. They are tools designed to break down barriers in workplaces, educational institutions, and government agencies. Often supported by data and business case arguments, as research suggests that diverse teams drive better decision-making and innovation. Black Lives Matter emerged as a grassroots movement following incidents of police brutality, most notably the killing of George Floyd in 2020. Its primary focus is on challenging systemic racism, police violence, and the criminal justice system's treatment of Black communities. Unlike DEI initiatives, which are typically internal programs within organizations, BLM is a public social movement that mobilizes communities, influences public policy, and advocates for social justice. While all three aim for a more just society, the civil rights movement was largely about changing laws and ending overt discrimination. In contrast, DEI initiatives are about transforming internal organizational cultures to ensure equal opportunity, and Black Lives Matter focuses on accountability and systemic change in how law enforcement and institutions treat Black individuals. Together, they represent different layers of the struggle for equality: legal, cultural, and social. One common misconception is that DEI efforts are only about benefiting Black communities. In reality, DEI is an umbrella term that covers the inclusion and support of every group that has faced marginalization, whether that be based on race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or socioeconomic status. The goal is to create spaces where every person can thrive and contribute to society without the barriers that historically limited access to opportunities. For instance, many corporations have long recognized the importance of gender diversity, not only to challenge sexism, but also to spur innovation. In the healthcare sector, diversity in the workforce is critical for delivering culturally sensitive care. And in academia, diverse student bodies enhance learning by broadening perspectives and enriching discussions. When DEI initiatives are well designed, they benefit not just one segment of society, but the entire community. They help build a workforce that mirrors the society it serves and ensure that every voice is heard. That's why, even as some groups push back against what they view as reverse discrimination, it's important to remember that these initiatives aim to level the playing field for all. Looking ahead, the future of DEI in the United States is uncertain. With the Trump administration actively rolling back federal DEI mandates and conservative groups launching legal challenges against corporate diversity programs, the landscape is rapidly shifting. Many observers warn that these changes could lead to a chilling effect, where companies preemptively abandon DEI efforts out of fear of legal or political retaliation. On the other hand, some experts argue that even if certain policies are scaled back, the underlying need for a diverse, inclusive society remains undeniable. Many companies, as we've seen with Costco and leading financial institutions, are choosing to maintain or even strengthen their DEI commitments despite external pressures. They argue that a diverse workforce is not only a moral imperative, but also a driver of innovation, competitiveness, and long-term success. In this era of political polarization, it remains to be seen whether federal and corporate policies will evolve in a way that protects the hard-won gains of civil rights, or whether we will see a backslide into an era reminiscent of Jim Crow. Critics warn that dismantling DEI may open the door to more overt forms of discrimination, while proponents argue that true meritocracy must be achieved without enforced quotas or politically charged training. If DEI initiatives are rolled back without a reinforced commitment to civil rights through robust legal protections, decades of progress could be undone. The key challenge lies in balancing merit-based systems with the deliberate dismantling of long-standing barriers that have excluded marginalized groups. As we reflect on these developments, it is important to remember that the fight for equality is multifaceted. The civil rights struggles of the past, the DEI initiatives of the present, and the grassroots activism of movements like Black Lives Matter are all part of one ongoing story, a story of striving for a more just and equitable society. In a time when political leaders are challenging the very foundations of diversity initiatives, it is up to us, the citizens, the employees, the educators, to hold fast to the principles of equality and inclusion. Thank you for watching A History in Color. If you enjoyed today's journey, please like, subscribe, and comment below with your thoughts. Your voice helps keep Black history vibrant and alive.